Well, some lawmakers have reacted to President Bola Tinubu's budget proposals. Some of them spoke on their first impressions.
Capital project, very interesting for the first time this year, is 8.7 trillion. It means that capital project is close to the current expenditure. So it's not about paying salary. You have a deficit of 8.7 trillion, which will going to be financed from external borrowing. But debt ratio to GDP is 3%. It's not worrisome. And again, tax to GDP is 10%, now going to 18%. I expect that inland revenue will visit your company somehow in the coming year. Inflation is at 21% inflation rate, and I think that is not bad at all. I think above all, the budget is reasonable.
I'm impressed with what the executive have done so far. The most important thing now is for those of us in the legislature to take a tour of the budget and look at where we can also use legislative support to make sure this budget works for the common man, because we are all operating from the same market force. Both the executive, the legislator, and also the common man there.
The most important thing that we need now, there's nobody that wants to do any budget for Nigeria now that will not be a deficit budget, given the way we are coming from and the number of, the kind of figures we have on ground that need to be serviced. But I think the most important thing is that how do we ensure that we begin to return normalcy into the economy, physical normalcy, monetary normalcy, structural normalcy. That I think is what is very, very important.
For the first time, we have some level of clarity. The president was loud and clear. The message was very simple and direct, that these are challenging times, but we have been able to navigate through this process with the removal of subsidy and so on and so forth, and now we have arrived at this first budget process. And I must tell you that indeed this budget offers some opportunity for accelerated economic development.
He marshaled out his plans for 2024, but what was most significant to me was that the federal executive is keeping an eye on the budget deficit. The budget deficit for this year is about 9 trillion, which is just about 3.88% of the GDP of the nation. That's a remarkable drop in the budget deficit of 2023, where we had about 6.8% in terms of its percentage to the GDP. So the executive is watching the debt service, is watching the budget deficit, but most importantly is the level of allocation that has been appropriated for capital expenditure. We are hopeful that this 2024 budget of renewed hope is going to give a lot of renewed hope to the people of Nigeria.
Collaboration and synergy between National Assembly and President's executive is in the Constitution. We do not need to throw chairs. We do not need to throw punches at each other before you people know we are working. No. We shall put everyone at MDAs on their toes. If you are ready, you are ready. If you are not ready, we put aside your budget. We do others.
The budget aims to deploy resources, enough resources, for the security sector, so that the Nigerian military and the Nigerian police will have the wherewithal to guarantee internal security for the purpose of peace, order, and good governance of the country.
Well, those were Nigerian lawmakers reacting to the president's presentation of the 2024 budget. Now, for another look at the emerging issues from that budget, we have Arise analyst Dayo Sobowale joining us to unpack this budget that is met with mixed responses. I just want to chime in with some reactions from the PDP saying this budget is designed, and I quote, designed to strangulate poor Nigerians. Mr. Sobowale, over to you. What are your thoughts?
Well, you will expect that from the PDP. And I will assume if the shoe was in the other foot, maybe it will still be the same. But the important thing is that this is a very, very important budget. Coming after COVID and coming after fuel subsidy is gone. You get it now. It has been rightly christened a budget of renewed hope. And hopefully, I hope it turns out to be that. Because budget making is not an end in itself. It's the implementation that matters. The spirit is there. You get me? I'm happy about the way they have gone about it. even though there is a deficit. But a deficit is not a negative thing on its own. Like that lawmaker noted, you see the ratio of deficit to GDP was 6.1% during, or 6.8% during the time of the last regime, last budget, but it's been reduced to 3.8% now. Although the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007 puts a threshold of 3%, but you see that can be exceeded if there's security problem. And we all know we have serious security problem.
Indeed.
The priority of the budget has been on the economy, to revive the economy, security and poverty alleviation. And I think it is a goal in the right direction. And you see the allocations have been made. You see defense has the highest, which is to be expected because of the security situation looming, all over the country. Then you have education, you have infrastructure. And you will notice that this is a continuous thing because like we discussed the last regime on the eve of leaving office, prioritize so many infrastructural things which have been adopted, not repudiated, because it is the same party. That is the beauty of it. Now it is up to the legislators, to screen the budget and pass it as recommended or make cuts. And hopefully, I hope this time, they will not follow the unofficial pattern of padding it instead of cutting costs. Because that will make us lose sense of the title of renewed hope. Because if there is too much waste, you cannot garner revenue.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. You just brought that. And even when you take into the issue of cost of governance itself.
That's right.
And the implementation of this budget, how do we proceed in this regard? Because that has always been a recurring decimal when it comes to budgets.
That is where the padding comes in, cost of governance. You get me? Because they are constituency projects into it. See, essentially, it is the duty of the legislature to approve government budget from the executive. And they are supposed to cut it, not add to it. So we are watching. And then you have mentioned the issue of cost of governance. We are watching. But then you see the Minister of Education said the fundamentals that were put into that budget were realistic and pragmatic. You get me? That the aim is to improve debt to GDP ratio from 10% to 18%. Get me? And to cut waste. And you see, if they are fiscally responsible and live within their limits, you get me? Things will go round. Things will go well. But you see, essentially, people always equate the morals amongst individuals with sovereign nations, but they are not always like that. That's why in international relations, you see there are no permanent friends or enemies, but permanent interests. In budget planning and execution, you get deficits can be used to finance growth. Present, ginger up the economy and finance future growth, which is essentially what this is all about. But even though we know our resources are very limited.
Okay, if you don't mind me coming in, but these were predicated on, oil projections regarding this around $77 per barrel. But if there were changing dynamics of that narrative in its implementation, how will that affect positively the fortunes of the budget?
See, usually almost 70% of revenue projection will come from oil.
Yeah.
This time it's less than 50% from oil. You get me? The rest from other sources. So, diversification of revenue sources is inherent there. That is the theory. That is the motive. We hope that is achieved. And we hope oil prices remain stable as far as is possible. And that, the essence of revenue generation or deficit financing is to make sure that we have a sort of trade balance that favors us, that we export things and have foreign currency to finance what we do.
Yeah.
And that is why, you see, this president wrote a book, Financialism, with an American consul, he said it, getting water from an empty well, from a dry well. How the financial system drains the economy. So he knows those he's dealing with. He knows what the banks can do. Because like I said yesterday, banks make huge profits in lead times and and if you don't want the economy to fall, you have to project them if they are going down. So they eat from both sides of their mouth in terms of economic crisis. But then the spirit of this budget is there, and people should be hopeful because the ministries, the departments and government agencies, I'm sure they are waiting to act. But I hopefully they act in the interest of Nigerians so that the spirit and letter and motive to salvage Nigerians and help them out of poverty will be achieved.
All right. Well, the bottom line again is that all of this is ceteris paribus.
All things
being equal. Mr. Dayo Sobowale.
No things are not always equal.
We know that exactly. So you know,
economic assumption.
That's economic. So let's take that from that what we will. Mr. Dayo Sobowale, thank you so much for your time as always on Newsday.